Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy English StoryLab. Let me ask you something. Have you ever lied just a little to get something important? What if one small lie could change your entire future? Today's story is about a girl who lied in her job interview. She thought it was harmless. She thought no one would notice. But sometimes even a small lie can grow bigger than we expect. This is a shadowing English story for B1 to B2 learners. Listen carefully, pause the video, repeat after me, copy the pronunciation, rhythm, and emotion. Now, let's begin. My name is Sophia, and this is the story of the worst decision I ever made. At least, that's what I thought at first. It all started on a rainy Monday morning. I was sitting at my small kitchen table staring at my laptop screen. The email was open in front of me. "Thank you for applying. We would like to invite you for an interview." My heart was beating fast. It was not just any job. It was my dream job. A marketing assistant position at a fast-growing company in the city. Good salary, creative work, real opportunities. There was only one problem. The job description clearly said, minimum 2 years of professional experience required. I had 6 months. 6 small, simple, not very impressive months. I had graduated last year. I had worked part-time. I had done internships. But I did not have 2 full years of experience. When I sent my application, I changed something, just a small detail. On my CV, I wrote, marketing assistant, 2 years experience, not 6 months, 2 years. At that moment, it felt harmless. I can do the job, I told myself. I just need the chance. And now, I had the interview. The interview was scheduled for Wednesday at 10 a.m. For 2 days, I could not sleep properly. What if they asked about my experience in detail? What if they checked my references carefully? What if they discovered the truth? But another voice in my head said, "You can handle it. You're smart. You'll figure it out." On Wednesday morning, I stood in front of the mirror. I wore a simple black blazer and light makeup. I wanted to look confident, even if I didn't feel confident inside. "Just stay calm," I whispered to myself. The company's office was on the 15th floor of a tall glass building. Everything looked modern and expensive. When I entered, I felt small. The receptionist smiled. "You must be Sophia." "Yes," I said, trying to sound relaxed. "Please have a seat. They'll call you in a few minutes." A few minutes felt like an hour. Finally, a woman in her mid-30s came out and called my name. "Hi, I'm Emma, the marketing manager." We shook hands. Her handshake was firm. I liked her immediately. We walked into a meeting room. There was another man inside, probably from HR. They asked the usual questions. "Tell us about yourself." "Why do you want to work here?" "What are your strengths?" I answered confidently. I had practiced everything. Then came the question I feared the most. "So," Emma said, looking at my CV, "you have 2 years of experience as a marketing assistant. Can you tell us more about your responsibilities in that role?" My throat felt dry. This was it. This was the moment. I smiled. "Yes, of course." And I started talking. I talked about social media campaigns, about content planning, about analytics reports, about client communication. Everything I said was technically true. I had done those things, just not for 2 full years. As I spoke, I noticed something. They were impressed. Emma nodded several times. The HR manager wrote notes. I felt my confidence growing. Maybe this lie wasn't a disaster. Maybe it was just a small adjustment. The interview lasted about 40 minutes. At the end, Emma smiled and said, "Thank you, Sophia. We'll contact you soon." I walked out of the building feeling light. On the bus home, I replayed the conversation in my mind. Did I sound convincing? Did I exaggerate too much? Did they notice anything strange? 2 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered carefully. Hello? Hi, Sophia. This is Emma from Brightwave Marketing. We'd like to offer you the position. For a second, I couldn't speak. I got the job. They trusted me. They believed me. I said yes. Of course, I said yes. That night, I celebrated with my best friend, Laura. This is amazing, she said. I'm so proud of you. I smiled, but inside, something felt heavy. I didn't tell her about the lie. I didn't tell anyone. On my first day at work, everything moved fast. New colleagues, new tasks, new expectations. Emma introduced me to the team. This is Sophia. She has 2 years of experience in marketing and will support our campaigns. The words hit me hard. 2 years. Every time someone said it, it felt louder. 2 years. I worked harder than anyone. I stayed late. I double-checked every email. I studied marketing articles at night. I was afraid of making a mistake that would expose me. One afternoon, Emma came to my desk. "We have a new client," she said. "It's a big project. Since you have solid experience, I'd like you to lead the initial strategy." My heart dropped. Lead? Initial strategy? That was not a beginner task. I forced a smile. Of course. Inside, panic was growing. I went to the bathroom and locked the door. I looked at myself in the mirror again, just like on interview day. "What have you done?" I whispered. This was no longer a small lie. This was responsibility. A real responsibility. And if I failed, everyone would know. For the first time, I realized something important. Getting the job was easy. Living with the lie was much harder. The following week felt like a test of my limits. The project Emma assigned to me was not small. It involved a new client in the fitness industry who wanted to completely rebrand their image. They needed a fresh social media strategy, a new content direction, and a clear target audience analysis. In theory, I understood everything. In practice, I felt exposed. Every time someone asked, "Sophia, what's your strategic recommendation?" I felt the weight of my lie pressing against my chest. I stayed at the office until 8 or 9 every evening. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I was afraid. I was terrified that someone would notice the gaps in my knowledge. I read old campaign reports, I analyzed previous data, I watched online marketing webinars late at night. The truth was simple. I was not incompetent, but I was inexperienced. And there is a difference. One afternoon, during a strategy meeting, something unexpected happened. Emma turned to me and said, "Sophia, based on your previous campaigns, what conversion rate improvement would you realistically expect in the first quarter?" The room became quiet. Everyone was looking at me. Conversion rate improvement, first quarter, realistic expectations. These were not abstract questions. These were numbers, metrics, accountability. I swallowed slowly. In my previous role, I began carefully. We typically saw around a 15 to 20% increase when we repositioned the content strategy and adjusted the audience segmentation. The words came out smoothly, too smoothly, because I had never personally led a repositioning strategy. I had assisted, I had supported, I had observed, but I had never been responsible. Emma nodded thoughtfully. "That's reasonable," she said. "Let's aim for 18% as a working target." 18%. Just like that, my estimate became a company goal. The meeting continued, but my mind was no longer present. I was thinking about consequences. If we reached 18%, I would look competent. If we failed, people would ask questions. And if they asked detailed questions, they might realize that my 2 years of experience were more theoretical than practical. That evening, I didn't go home immediately. I sat alone in the office with my laptop open, staring at the strategy draft. For the first time since getting the job, I asked myself a serious question. Was this ambition or dishonesty? I had told myself that I deserved the opportunity, that I had the skills. That experience was just a number. But now, experience was not just a number, it was expectation. A few days later, Laura noticed something was wrong. We were sitting in a cafe, and she said, "You look exhausted. Isn't this your dream job?" "It is," I replied. "Then why do you look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders?" I hesitated. I almost told her. Almost. But I couldn't admit it out loud. Saying it would make it real. "It's just pressure," I said instead. "Big projects." She nodded. "Pressure means growth." I smiled weakly. But this didn't feel like growth. It felt like walking on thin ice. The following week, we presented the initial strategy to the client. I stood at the front of the conference room, explaining our audience research and content pillars. My voice was steady. My slides were clear. My analysis was strong because I had worked relentlessly. The client seemed satisfied. After the meeting, Emma approached me. "You handled that well," she said. "You seem very comfortable presenting." "Thank you," I replied. But instead of pride, I felt something else. Guilt. The more competent I appeared, the worse I felt inside. Because I knew that part of their trust was based on an illusion. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about long-term consequences. What if they check references more deeply during promotion discussions? What if someone from my previous job mentions the real timeline? What if HR reviews employment records for internal auditing? The lie was small in the beginning. Now it was structural. It was part of my professional identity. A few weeks later, the campaign results started coming in. The numbers were promising, engagement was rising, click-through rates were improving. We were approaching the 18% target. Emma called me into her office. "I'm impressed," she said. "You've adapted quickly. Not everyone with experience performs this well." Her words felt like a knife. Not everyone with experience. She believed in me. And suddenly, the situation became more complicated because this was no longer about fear of being exposed. It was about integrity. For the first time, I realized something deeply uncomfortable. I was capable of doing this job, but I had started it dishonestly. And that contradiction was eating me from the inside. One evening, after everyone left the office, I opened my original CV file on my laptop. There it was. Marketing assistant, 2 years experience. One small line, one small exaggeration. I hovered my cursor over the document. I imagined sending an email. "Hi, Emma, I need to clarify something." But my hands froze. If I confessed, what would happen? Would they fire me immediately? Would they lose trust? Would they see all my work differently? Or would they respect the honesty? The worst part was not the risk of losing the job. It was the constant internal conflict. Every success felt incomplete. Every compliment felt undeserved. I began to understand something important. Success built on insecurity does not feel like success. It feels like survival. And I was tired of surviving. I wanted to feel proud without hesitation. The next morning, I walked into the office earlier than usual. I stood outside Emma's office door. My heart was beating fast again, just like on interview day. But this time, the fear was different. This was not fear of failure. This was fear of truth. I raised my hand and knocked. Come in, Emma said from inside her office. I stepped in and closed the door behind me. For a second, I just stood there. She looked up from her laptop. Everything okay? She asked. That simple question made everything harder. I sat down slowly. There's something I need to tell you, I began. My voice was steady, but my hands were cold. Emma gave me her full attention. When I applied for this job, I continued, I wrote that I had 2 years of experience. She nodded slightly. I didn't, I said quietly. I had about 6 months. I exaggerated. The word hung in the air. Exaggerated. Not made a mistake. Not misunderstanding. Exaggerated. Emma didn't interrupt. She just watched me carefully. I told myself it was harmless. I continued. I believed I could do the job. And I've tried to prove that every day. But I didn't start honestly. And I don't want to build my career on something that isn't true. The silence felt heavy. Finally, she leaned back in her chair. Why are you telling me this now? She asked calmly. Because I can't enjoy success, I wanted to say. Because every compliment feels like a reminder. Because I'm tired of being afraid. Instead, I answered simply, because it's wrong. And I don't want to continue like this. Emma studied my face. Do you realize that we could terminate your contract for that? She said. Yes, I replied. I understand. My heart was pounding, but I felt strangely calm. For the first time in weeks, I was not hiding. She stood up and walked toward the window. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she turned back to me. Sophia, she said slowly, you're not the first candidate to exaggerate on a CV. I blinked, but you are one of the very few who came back voluntarily to admit it. I didn't know what to say. She continued, when we hired you, yes, we believed you had 2 years of experience. But what impressed us during the interview wasn't just your timeline. It was your thinking. She paused. And over the past weeks, your performance has confirmed that. Relief tried to enter my body, but I didn't allow it yet. So, what happens now? I asked. Emma sat down again. HR will need to adjust your official record, she said. And technically, your salary might be slightly revised during the next evaluation period. That was fair. More than fair. But, she added, you're staying. The words felt unreal. You're staying, she repeated, because competence matters, and integrity matters even more. I felt my throat tighten. I'm sorry, I said. I know, she replied. And next time, trust your skills. If you had written 6 months instead of 2 years, we might still have called you. Confidence doesn't require exaggeration. That sentence stayed with me. Confidence doesn't require exaggeration. When I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Nothing dramatic had happened, no shouting, no humiliation, no public exposure, just truth. That evening, I called Laura. I told her, I said. You what? She almost shouted. I told my manager about the CV. There was a long silence. And? I still have my job. Laura exhaled loudly. You are insane, but I'm proud of you. For the first time since getting hired, I felt proud too. Not because I survived, but because I chose honesty when it was difficult. In the following weeks, something changed inside me. I worked the same hours. I led the same projects. But I was no longer afraid. If I didn't know something, I asked. If I made a mistake, I admitted it. And strangely, People respected that more than perfect performance. The campaign eventually reached a 17.5% improvement. Not exactly 18, but close. Emma smiled when she saw the results. "See," she said, "realistic expectations." This time, I smiled without guilt. Months later, during my performance review, Emma said something I will never forget. "Your growth has been impressive," she said, "not just professionally, but personally." That was the promotion I truly wanted, because careers are not only built on skill, they're built on character. Looking back now, I understand something clearly. The worst part of lying wasn't the risk of losing the job, it was losing peace. And the best part of telling the truth wasn't keeping the job, it was keeping myself. Sometimes we lie because we're afraid we're not enough, but the truth is simpler. If you're capable, you don't need to exaggerate. And if you're not ready, growth is more powerful than pretending. That interview changed my career, but the confession changed me. Now it's your turn. Listen to the story again. Pause after each sentence and repeat out loud. Focus on pronunciation, rhythm, and emotion. This is the shadowing technique, and it will help you speak more naturally and confidently. Think about the message of this story. Have you ever felt pressure to exaggerate your skills? What would you do in this situation? If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to Easy English Story Lab, and write your thoughts in the comments. Keep practicing every day. Confidence grows when honesty meets effort. See you in the next story.